Now, coming to the next session, our invigorating panel discussions. And the first one is on building a secure and resilient 5G infrastructure. With a lot of socio-economic development aspiration riding on 5G, it is also important that the industry adopts technologies like AI, ML, robotic process automation, blockchain to create always available, self-assessing, and self-healing resilient network that can deal with demands of the future. To deliberate and share insights, we would like to invite eminent speakers for this session. We have Rajkumar Upadhyay, ED, C. Manish Tiwari, Senior Vice President and Global CISO, Bharti, Airtel. Gulshan Khurana, EVP Transmission and Core Planning Technology, Vodafone Idea Limited. Harsha Ram, Network Business Unit, Sify Technologies Limited. The session will be moderated by Sunil Rajguru, Editor, PCQuest and CiOL. Over to you, Mr. Rajguru.
So welcome everyone to the panel session, Building a Secure and Resilient 5G Infrastructure. So today we will have a panel discussion on this extremely key topic of not only building a secure 5G infrastructure for India, and we have to see that it's resilient too, and it will last for many years to come. So in this panel, we have with us Manish Tiwari, Senior VP and Global CISO, Bharti Airtel. Welcome, Manish.
Thank you.
And we also have with us Gulshan Khurana, EVP, Transmission and Core Planning Technology, Vodafone Idea Limited. Welcome, Gulshan.
Thank you, Sunil. Good to be here in the panel.
Yeah. And we also have Harsha Ram, Network Business Unit, Sify Technologies Limited. Welcome, Harsha.
Thanks, Sunil. Thanks for having me over here.
And last but not least, we have with us Dr. Rajkumar Upadhyay, Executive Director of C. Welcome.
Thank you, Sunil. Thank you.
Yeah. So, I mean, before I kickstart the discussion and ask each of you individual questions on your area of expertise, I'd just like to throw a question to the entire panel. You know, like the most important thing, 5G network, but 5G is a very capital intensive proposition. It's not like 3G or 4G where you had, big towers spread out. We have to build smaller towers, which will be much closer together in greater numbers. And it's going to be a logistical task to do that. India has a lot of problems with the roads and, permissions and all. So can India afford to come out with a nationwide 5G grid during the COVID era? Or do you think that we will just begin in cities first and it will very slowly spread to the rest of the country? So is there anyone who'd like to take
Yeah,
this?
I think I'd just like to take the first shot. Kabir, what is going to happen is that, look, as you rightly said, the 5G infrastructure requires a monumental shift. To a certain extent, the telcos are already ready for it. But as you rightly said, the new set of towers required to come up, and probably their concentration will be much higher. There is also this whole tectonic shift towards a complete new generation of technology, which are going to be purely IT based and cloudified. So at least in India, if you really ask me, also considering the complexity as well as the cost of implementation of 5G, and most importantly, use cases, right? So the most important aspect of 5G is that, look, how will it impact, the common citizen or the industry at large? And for an average user, typically 4G does suffice. However, there are lots of use cases for 5G. And till such time those use cases for 5G, right, do not really mature, the commercial case around a huge expansion of 5G in the country probably will not give you that, may not make that sense. So from a technical perspective, from a business perspective, from a use case perspective, I think 5G will start coming in pockets, and thereafter, and slowly and steadily, and perhaps a little later, it'll spread out much faster. If you talk about use cases, I mean, driverless cars, remote surgery, operation of a large number of drones, for logistics and social purpose. I mean, some of these things probably India could adopt in the near future, maybe some sooner rather than later, but many of the use cases will, take a lot of time. So in the end, 5G could just become, without use cases, 5G would just be a faster way of doing live streaming of data or movies, etc. Yeah.
Yeah, Sunil. So, from where I think Manish had a good point. I think the key consideration here is going to be, and I think the whole industry is looking at that very closely, is what is the spectrum cost, right? Because most telcos balance sheet will be, what do I have left after spectrum, and how much can I invest beyond spectrum, right? So spectrum, that's that underlying raw material that you need, and then whatever is left is beyond that is what will drive 5G adoption in terms of increasing fiberization to towers and things like that. So I think the first criteria will be, what is spectrum costs and how much of that spectrum is available, how much is left over, and obviously the use cases and what can one do with 5G beyond what people are doing with 4G. I think that is the big question mark that everybody has. We are sort of focused around the enterprise opportunity. They tend to be early movers, and 5G adoption has been largely enterprise led in many markets. But I think in India, I think it's still people are still trying to figure out what 5G can do to their enterprise. And they are not just, it's not just a connectivity issue. It's a much larger thing. And I think Manish sort of touched upon it. It's also a sort of a transformation around the IT landscape of the enterprise that I think will have to undergo a change. So it's not an easy shift to make. It's not going to be overnight somebody turns off a 4G network and moves to 5G. I think this will stretch out over a period of time, and it will evolve. Right. At the end of the day, I mean, if you look at India today, 2G networks are still running. They are maybe 200, 300 million still on 2G. So I don't think, I think this will be more, sort of evolutionary rather than, one big step happening and people moving to 5G overnight.
Sunil, this is Gulshan from VI. I'll completely echo the sentiments from Harsha and Manish, but adding a new dimension to it. So evolution from 2G to 3G to 4G has been about increasing the bandwidth being consumed by a consumer. How do we give more bandwidth? But 5G in true sense is a disruptive technology wherein you don't only focus on B2C segment. This is the first time probably where we'll, in true sense, a large scale enterprise or industry integration happening in a B2B2C fashion with the telco. So I would say it's a disruptive technology wherein you don't focus only on end consumer who will be using a device in the hand, but it will be automating industries. It will be ultra low latency requirements, which are enabling hospitals, e-governance, medical streams, education, gaming, AI, etc. So if we see these kind of use cases evolving, and we see the whole 9 yards of architecture for 5G, Manish and Harsha both touched upon spectrum probably, right? If we go ahead, it's extremely high frequency technology. That means you will have base stations covering a smaller distance. You will have large number of base stations, probably small cells or picos coming in or micros coming in abundance, which will be covering very, very high throughput, very, very low latency, but a limited area to cover. Covering second aspect is the backhauling, very, very important, because unless you do a right backhaul on E-band or a fiber, you will not be able to enjoy the real latency, benefits of 5G. Core, you probably will have to build a lot of slices to offer normal consumer a regular experience, a niche slice for a niche consumption, a slice for enterprise, for example, a slice for very, very low latency applications. And then ultimately going to the core, you will have, cloud native core applications available. So it's not changing only one kind of a segment. It's bringing revolution to every segment of the technology. And we are all probably geared up to take it to that fashion because we're preparing much in advance for 5G to come in. So I think so this entire ecosystem will take time to develop. It will, we need to see if there will be enough applications coming in right time to motivate consumers to go to 5G. However, enterprise industry 4.0 will drive this ecosystem. It'll take time for us to completely mature on slices. Trials have been done. Trials have been done all over. We are doing trials on a couple of use cases. So is Airtel and Jio as well. So I think the real benefit on IoT, mass communication, slicing, service-aware networks, B2B2C will take some time to get mature.
Yeah, I think my job has been made much simpler. I think Harsha, Gulshan, and Manish have already touched upon what 5G can do use cases, but I will focus mainly on the what your question was, that whether for the infrastructure, creating the infrastructure. Yes, indeed, 5G wireless is expected to bring widespread disruption. It's definitely going to generate new revenue streams, as various new services will be enabled on 5G networks. Yes, 5G will require spectrum, as Harsha was referring, but these are, soft kind of infrastructure. Once the spectrum is allotted, you need to deploy it. But for deploying, you need many things. 5G will require new transmission infrastructure. It will require fiberization of towers. It will require addition of thousands of cell towers, small cells in dense metro cities, distributed antenna system. And then there will be upgrades to the RAN infrastructure on macro cell. For all of this, I think a lot of money is going to be need to be spent. Therefore, in my opinion, deployment is going to be gradual. The network part, I'm saying, services will of course evolve, as pointed out by the previous speakers. But all investment by operators will be purely based on the ROI. And I guess urban areas will get first preference, as seen is 3G and 4G. 3G and 4G, we have seen that how from urban the operators are moving rural. It's quite heartening today to see that 4G penetration in India is significant, in villages and smaller towns. Considerably good, footprint is available. And therefore, I feel eventually 5G also will start from the metro and these cities and slowly populate to the rural areas with lesser disposable income. So it will take, the path will be gradual.
So I think I got a general idea. Thanks to the panel, I think now we do have a rough idea of where 5G stands and where it is going. So I think I'll just build up on that. So I'll just ask the first specific question to Manish. What about data privacy and security? I mean, I'm sure 5G will come. It'll be great. It'll have bandwidth. But can we secure data privacy and data security? And will 5G be better or worse? Will it be more difficult to do data privacy and security than its predecessors? And what can the government and industry and all of us do to secure our data and maintain general cybersecurity? Because I mean, 5G is just not about phones. It's going to spread everywhere. I mean, even traffic signals, connected cars. So 5G is going to be a very complex network. Can we, maintain cybersecurity? What is?
See, we need to really understand what is it that we are looking at in 5G. So in 5G, we would have moved away from a centralized, large, a reasonable, hardware-based switching to a distributed, software-defined digital routing. And I'm putting it very, very, at a very high level. We will also basically see the deployment of edge systems, edge systems in a very, very big way. And, the further complication that actually comes in that there is going to be a very, very high level of virtualizing of software in higher level network functions, which in many cases previously have been performed by physical appliances. Right. Although I would say with 4G, there has been a phenomenal shift towards IT-based systems. But I mean, with 5G, it is going to be, a tectonic shift, as I had mentioned earlier. Now, at the end of the day, if you're looking at the whole 5G stack running on a cloud or a virtualized technology, and obviously preferably, cloud technology, whether on-prem, on or public cloud or a hybrid model, you're looking at all the vulnerabilities that typically impact an IT environment, which is based on, and communications are based on IP protocols. The same thing, those vulnerabilities have a lift and shift into this new 5G environment. The other thing with the 5G environment that one really has to understand is deployment of encryption standards and effective key management. It will, unlike traditional systems, there will be a very, very high level of automation, in 5G systems. And hence, if there is any gap or a vulnerability, that will also get amplified. So, so the cyber risks in a 5G environment are significant. There is no doubt about it. And one of the things that typically challenges which are faced in the world of, the software industry is that, look, on a regular basis, you have, researchers who are looking at vulnerabilities, and it's the ability of the OEMs to sort of, patch those vulnerabilities and keep one step ahead. And of course, then we also are looking at an environment where you will have to stitch together a complete 5G architecture using applications from multiple vendors. And that's where, again, from a supply from a software industry and a supply chain risks basically come into play. Can this be secured? Yes, of course it can be secured. I think the one thing that we should and can be doing in India is adoption of global standards. Unfortunately, this is also a work in progress in a very big way. If you see, even in the US, there are bodies which are working. Eventually, there will be a NIST standard which will be coming out. However, there is a lot of work which has been done in 5G cybersecurity. And I guess what is really important is two things. The first is, at a government level, I think it's very important that they come up with a security baseline or a security framework saying that, look, this is the minimalistic that really needs to go. And that is not only applicable to, the telecom industry or the telecom players. That is binding on any OEM or any supplier that wishes to contribute to the overall 5G infrastructure in the country. So one is, security standards and baseline, adoption of open standards and, frameworks which the world is obviously adopting. But at the same time, the government needs to probably come up with a guiding principle which defines a base security, framework for 5G deployment in the country. Apart from that, I would say, as far as data privacy is concerned, if data privacy is highly dependent on two things. One is that you are able to secure the data through effective, having a robust and secure IT infrastructure. And secondly, access control, where are you storing the customer data? And thirdly, you have very strict access controls built into it. And fourthly, your data is secured through appropriate and high quality encryption standards with very strong key mechanics. Apart from these things, I think the same controls that are applicable in the field of IT, would be, simple things like, application security, effective change management, strong access management, access control management. Today I've already mentioned encryption standards. I think this is also a right time to think of, putting zero trust architecture as an integral theme in some of these, some of the designs or the architecture that, finally comes out. And having a very, very strong, security around supply chain, whether it is hardware or software, so that it becomes binding on anybody who participates in this. And I'd like to just give an example. I don't want to take any names, but this is a typical problem faced by the industry when deploying SCADA systems. So typically, the SCADA systems that are dished out by the OEM, in many cases, I've seen them being deployed on version -1, whether it's the base OS or whatever. So you have an upgraded SCADA system coming out, but it is not compatible with newer and safer operating systems which are actually coming out. So there has to be some sort of a control and regulation, on vendors saying that, look, if you want to participate, then XYZ, you also need to conform to certain standards and security guidelines. So, I think both of them are doable. There's a lot of heavy lifting that needs to be done. But the only effective way to do that is to basically have a built-in approach to security rather than a bolt-on. So in this case, particularly in the deployment of 5G infrastructure in the country, it would be a disaster if security were a bolt-on and an afterthought. It has to be thought through. It has to be an integral part of the overall design before it is rolled out. And the fact of the matter is that the whole aspect of security will always be a work in progress. But initially, it has to be a well thought through, built-in approach rather than a bolt-on approach. Thank you.
Thank you, Manish, for that detailed explanation. Now, just before I proceed, I think I forgot to introduce myself to our viewers. I'm Sunil Rajguru. I'm an editor with Cyber Media. So I should have done that at the beginning. Anyway, so I'll move on to you, Gulshan. So, I mean, Manish has explained the, data privacy security part. Now, a 5G network is going to be very different from, 4G network and 3G network, because artificial intelligence is going to play a role in it. It's two things. One, AI itself has evolved, and second, the network itself has evolved. And 5G, as I said, it's going to encompass smart cities. It can touch almost every, IoTs, smart homes and everything. So can this, especially in India, can we create an always on 24/7 self-assessing and self-healing resilient network? Because this is important. I remember in the olden days of computer, laptop, you used to shut it off. But now this network is not going to be shut off. So I'd just like to know your views on that.
Yeah, so before I start answering, I think we have seen in the last 1.5 years with pandemic also in prominence, we have seen a lot of shift in the way we work. The data consumptions of consumers have increased many folds, and the consumption is not happening only from city centers, it's happening from all areas, because the workflows that was concentrated across big cities have moved back to their home location. So you're right, it's an always on kind of scenario. We used to talk and be in office to work, but we are now working from home using a lot of audiovisual tools and OTT applications. So it requires 24/7 upkeep. Very, very important to have all bandwidth running with right latency. But coming to your question, Sunil, so self-assessing and self-provisioning networks in some kind of form of fashion are already becoming visible now. So we are installing automation tools in our network operation centers, which are prominently, starting with AI, learning from behaviors, and provisioning themselves on responses. So that started to happen. So I would say self-assessing, self-provisioning already happening. However, large-scale self-healing networks are still some distance away. As the network complexity increases and we move from vendor-specific custom-built, which Manish also touched upon, hardware to virtualized and cloud-based architecture. So multi-vendor and open architecture of softwares, it makes it a little difficult for integrating AI kind of tools, which will be learning from one kind of environment and replicating the behaviors and decision making. So which will be on agnostic vendors and platforms. The first use case that AI in NOC, which are operational or under deployment with many of us, are things like dynamic spectrum allocation, for example, service aware slice creation, let's say for service offering to enterprise segments. Implementing modularity and scaling in terms of cloud architecture, for example. Resource allocation happens on clouds in an automatic fashion today. So you don't have to physically go and provision resources for one application to grow. It is happening automatically in cloud resources, for example. It will happen for FCAPs, alarms handling, performance management, etc. It's already happening there. So self-healing to a large extent will take some time. Provisioning and assessing things is happening today. And then, especially in the 5G arena, automation will play a crucial role. And increase in automation is believed to transform the telcos, which are voice and data centric, which are telcos today, to become digital service providers. So we are not only having a telco which is only giving voice and data services. We are becoming digital service providers, meeting all your digital needs, for example, a lifestyle management, for example. So you see, it's essential to manage this complex network elements in a unified fabric to deliver digital services at a cloud scale. We talk about hyperscale and cloud scale today, while we still meet our cost and performance and quality objectives. So automation for me would definitely, in a network element, deliver operational agility, which will mean quick onboarding of new equipment, new vendors, new components, new services. Operational velocity, which will be helping me out to do a zero-touch service, for example. A request comes in, I take the request, provision the circuits, give a service back to enterprise, has to be with the right SLAs, has to be with the right velocity. Operational efficiency will be brought in, which will be by streamlining operations and automating, frequent tasks, which are mundane tasks, all automated to go, and I wanted to give physical resources for them. And operational reliability as well. It's not only sufficient to provision, self-heal and say I'm done. No, there has to be reliable operations efficiency to ensure that it meets my intended results. Because today the customer is not only asking for service, they're also asking for QoS along with service, right? So especially at VI, where I come from, many of our business verticals have already automated, from customer feasibility study to onboarding to a network, offering service configuration, etc. So it's one-touch solution where we have implemented some time back, So next step would probably be introducing service-based automatic SDN controllers, automated slice offering to consumers which are requiring different kind of QoS and security, for example. So with these kind of, I think going at this kind of self-healing is the end state, self-provisioning, self-assessing, and then reaching self-healing. So that's a distance away because, so far we were only provisioning Erlangs and gigabits for consumers, but now we'll be giving right QoS, giving right latency. So we are not only measured on the conventional parameters in networks. So the entire shift is happening. As I earlier said, it's not a B2C game only, it's a B2B2C game now. So all these parameters will come in, will be giving this service in disruptive fashion. The networks are going to be complex. They're not going to be as simple as they were earlier. There will be multiple slices for different service offerings. The network itself is becoming service aware now. So automation is a must. But steps being probably assessing, doing realization, and then doing healing. This is my thought on.
So thank you for that, Gulshan. So anyway, let's hope we can, get that self-resilient, self-healing soon. Though we'll start off with a smart.
I would. Everybody hopes so. Yeah.
So I'll just come to Harsha. Now, Manish talked about a secure network. Gulshan talked about a smart network. So this smart and secure network is going to be different from 2G, 3G, 4G, because for the first time, we always talk of smart cities, but it's just a name, it's a fad, but you will really have smart cities because every component of the city will be smart. That's why we'll call it smart city. You'll have smart homes. We've already reached the tipping point. Everyone can afford an Alexa or a Google Home or anything. Then smart cars, connected cars, smart utilities. That's the way forward for the government, and even Industry 4.0. Because Industry 4.0 in the COVID era is, no touch. Even small businesses will have to adopt Industry 4.0. So this smart and secure network has the potential of, it's like 100% penetration. Usually, like you say, this is for 20, this can reach 100% penetration. But I want to ask is, can it benefit India? Can this bring about a socio-economic development for India? Can we, become a superpower based on economic development? And at the ground level, at least the smartphones did benefit the rural areas. So I'm saying, can we bring a socio-economic development for India? Because technology, everything is fine, but unless it does that, what's the point?
Yeah. Great question, Sunil. I think it's one that we are very passionately looking at, as we speak today. So when we look at, say, the next 5-10 years out into India, and some of the economic goals that the government has set, some very ambitious economic goals that the government has set, I think there are basically 2 or 3 pillars around. One is you will see an increasing urbanization. It may not be in the context, I think after the pandemic, it may not be in the context of 5 cities or 6 cities that traditionally people spoke about. I think it will be about 50 to 100 cities in India that I think with remote work, I think a lot of the tier 2 cities will start seeing a very different cycle of development. Right. So I think there is going to be increasing urbanization. I think that's a trend globally that we have seen across all countries. If you want higher economic growth and development, increasing urbanization is one aspect of it. Right now, I think the shift post the pandemic is whether it's 5 cities or 6 cities, or whether it is 70 to 100 cities. Right. So I think that's one aspect of it. I think the second aspect of it is increasing focus around the manufacturing. I think the government is also putting a lot of focus around local manufacturing, right? So I think that's the second pillar that I see for growth coming forward. The third piece obviously is if you are trying to lift a whole lot of people up the value chain, underlying social sectors such as education, healthcare, these become very, very critical, right? So if you bucket the entire context of urbanization, increasing focus around manufacturing, and improving the social structure, right, which is around education and healthcare, I think 5G has a potential to play a big role in all these three areas. Right now, the question is, when does that, when does the investment go in? How does the use cases develop and things like that? Broadly, I think we see 2-3 things. On the manufacturing side, Industry 4.0, and I think Gulshan touched upon it, Manish as well touched upon it. I think Industry 4.0 will probably be some of the early use cases. I think we'll see a lot of that happening fairly quickly, right? So real efficiency and for Indian manufacturing enterprises to compete globally, right? Because we are no longer, it's no longer just about India. You have to compete globally, right? So to be able to compete globally, the efficiency, the amount of investments that you need to make into IT and the quality that you need to bring, I think clearly 5G has a role to play there. I think that's one, I think that will probably be the lead that I see. The second piece is around the smart city piece. I think most of our cities are, have 50 years, 100 years, 200 years of history, unlike, some of the Western countries and cities that have developed, right? So there will be bottlenecks in terms of the traditional infrastructure. How many roads can I build? How wide a road can I build? How many flyovers can I build? I mean, most state governments are focused around that, but there is a limit to what that can do vis-a-vis the population densities that most of these cities have, right? I think the one place that we can definitely be world-class is around the communications infrastructure, right? And enabling, I think, from a smart city perspective, I think there are 2 or 3 areas that I clearly see. Again, it's a question of timing, but I think 2 or 3 areas that 5G can really make a difference. The first is the health and safety. I think a lot of our cities struggle with providing a safe environment. So I think the health and safety side of it is clearly one area that I think will have a big play with 5G, or 5G can really improve the quality of health and especially the safety side of it. The second thing is, I think most cities will have to certainly look at reconfiguring the energy grid, whether it is power, whether it is gas, whether it is a transition from petrol or carbon fuel to EV. I was looking at a startup doing an EV bike. The EV bike actually has more commonality with a cell phone than a traditional car or a motorcycle, right? So I think the EV transition, the improvement of the electric grid and the efficiency of the electric grid and the gas grid, I think these are 3 areas that I think I'm very excited, and I think 5G can certainly be an enabler there. I think there's a lot of benefit in terms of improving the quality of lives and improving the general ESG and the climate, the climate and pollution conditions around that. So I think that's the second piece of it, which I think 5G has a big role to play. Last but not the least is the social, the net, which is education and healthcare. I think these 2 are, areas, that I think can be impacted big time. Traditionally, we have been, as a percentage of GDP, it has been low. So it's a question of how much you can extract with that kind of, budgets that, we have as a country. And how do we use technology as a force multiplier to improve the quality using technology for both healthcare and education. I think both of these, I think COVID has demonstrated that with the right intent, and I think the government has the right intent, with the right intent, technology can be a force multiplier. I think COVID, as an example, is a great one. I think with the right intent and with the right policy, I think it can be transformed and really move to the next level there. So I do see not just the traditional smart city side of it, but I see these three pillars being heavily influenced by technology and helping the government and our nation meet both economic and social goals over the next 5-10 years. I think it's a big force multiplier that can be brought in. It's not short term, but these are more medium to long term that I think it can be a big force multiplier.
Yeah, Harsha, I think 5G can offer a lot of solutions for India in the next 10 years. So let's hope. So Dr. Rajkumar, just now Harsha was speaking, he said one very interesting thing, that government has set very ambitious targets. So it is a fact, this government has set very ambitious targets in everything, including IT, data localization, and 5G. So maybe you could speak from the Make in India point of view. If India gets its own proven core technology, how much will that help in data localization? And how much will it help in mitigate security risks like what Manish talked about? So you're from the CDOT point of view, what about your roadmap from 4G to 5G and 5G SA? I mean, if you could speak on these issues.
The first thing you said about data localization, I think privacy part was already talked about by Manish.
So maybe you can talk of data localization.
So I'll talk first data localization, then what as a country, how we are moving from 4G to 5G.
Sure.
So as far as the data localization is actually concerned, is primarily due to two benefits. One is perceived economic benefits of processing consumer data, and second is the main requirement is difficulty in accessing personal data for national security and law enforcement purposes. You know that if the data is stored, the data is consumed here, but the stored is somewhere else, then it becomes very, very difficult for the law enforcement agencies to seek this, collect this data. Currently, you may be aware that the governments actually go through a mechanism called Mutual Legal Assistance Treaty, MLAT, to access this data, and typically takes a few months to get this data. So therefore, one is that we need to get faster access to our own data, personal data for the law enforcement. But there are other objectives of the government for, you may be aware that there was a Sri Krishna report on data localization, data privacy. And this report is already tabled in the parliament, it is under debate. But there are actually there are three more objectives for pursuing data localization. One is increasing economic growth and boosting employment, preventing foreign surveillance, because we keep hearing in newspapers that this data is leaked, that data is leaked, and then better enforcing data protection laws. If data is available somewhere else, I don't think you can protect that data. So now comes the, before I go to 5G, some is data specific, sector specific organizations have already taken some lead into this, even though the bill has not yet been passed in the parliament. For example, telecommunication sector already requires that the data should be locally stored and locally processed for the subscriber information. RBI has mandated that all payment data should be stored in India, although it can be processed abroad. Regarding the 4G, 5G, government, you are right. Government has really put an ambitious plan under Atmanirbhar Bharat. Government wants that, given the talent India has, we have skill, we have expertise, we have technical know-how, we are the exporter of the IPR to the rest of the world. So therefore, why can't we create our own 4G, 5G infrastructure? And, government is also supporting in various ways to support the ecosystem. For example, government has come up with schemes like PMI, PLI, and many other schemes under Atmanirbhar Bharat. What I can say as a head of CDOT, that we are the telecom R&D center of the government of India. I have closely witnessed the strengths of Indian telecom research ecosystem, wherein various world-class, secure, cost-effective equipment and innovation solutions are already being deployed in the country. If you see the routers, switches, GPONs, DWDMs, network management system, cybersecurity solutions, Wi-Fi, so many startups are actually turning out not many things in the domain. The only thing they required was a push and a good support from the ecosystem. As far as the CDOT is concerned, you may be aware, we are already testing our 4G indigenously developed solution in Ambala and Chandigarh, along with TCS and brand partner Tejas and Lekha. And once the POC is over, I think country is likely, BSNL is likely to get the first 4G system, indigenously made 4G system. We are also committed, we have also committed to BSNL that we will give our 5G NSA to BSNL in this tender itself. So our 5G NSA will be rolled out somewhere in May, June next year. As regards 5G SA, yes, it requires little more work. Trust is there. This is an ambitious project of the government. We have been clearly tasked by the government to come up with own 4G, 5G for the country, and which we are sincerely working. 4G is already successful from my point of view. From the proof of concept in Chandigarh and Ambala, it will prove to the India as well as the rest of the world that this technology is there. Once we deploy it in BSNL, I'm sure that it opens up a window of opportunity for deploying it for other operators as well as globally. I'm sure that with our determined efforts and with the industry collaboratively working, will definitely lead to creation of secure and resilient 5G infrastructure. Not many things have been talked about security. If our core network is our own, I think half the security problems go away. You may be aware that everything is connected on IP. If the core is brought down, telecom network will come down, banking network will come down, health network will come down, electricity will come down. So everything is dependent on telecom. Therefore, it is imperative for our country to develop our own 4G, 5G core systems. RAN will have a localized problem. If the security breach happens in a particular RAN, it will affect a local area. Whereas if security breach happens in the core, it will affect the entire country, entire other sectors. Therefore, we need to develop our 4G, 5G. I'm sure with the kind of talent we have, with the kind of government support we have, we'll be soon you will hear 5G from the country. 4G is already delivered.
Thank you for that. So I think we have like time for everyone's parting shot. So I'll just ask one final parting question. Maybe everyone can answer within a minute. So, I mean, as the topic says, can India build a secure and resilient 5G infrastructure? What I mean is, of course we can, but if no, what are the roadblocks? What are the roadblocks we are building it? And if we are ready to go ahead like today or tomorrow, then in how much time can we implement 5G network in India?
So
I think whoever wants to go first.
I'll continue
okay,
what
fine.
I said.
Sure.
You know that the biggest thing is the investments are required for this. You know, in terms of R&D, India has only 0.65% of the GDP spent on R&D. So, but with this government, there is a strong focus that there won't be shortage of money. I'll give you money, you develop. So therefore, I'm sure that 5G, this country will see indigenous 5G soon. Like some other operators are also talking about, Jio is talking about that we have 5G. There is 5G test bed already created in IIT Chennai, where we are allowing all the startups, all the ecosystem partners to come up and test their 5G. So I'm sure there is nothing stopping this country this time with the strong support of the government. Honorable Prime Minister has laid out clear roadmap for us, saying that the country should have its own 4G, 5G, and will deliver it. Once we have our own 4G, 5G, half the security problems are already solved.
Question was on will we be able to build resilient network and when? So we have been very successful in launching 4G services long back and becoming the biggest per sub consumer of data in the world, surpassing China as well. So now our data consumption has been increasing at a static rate of 17 to 30% annually. So we've been able to manage, change composition consumption patterns during the pandemic period as well. And wherein virtual offices have started, people are moving to different locations. The consumption patterns are moved from city-centric to rural, semi-urban, etc. So the question is not if we can build a secure, resilient network on 5G. The question is when will it happen? So it will definitely happen. When will it happen is the bigger question. It will be either driven by investment being done or also on the kind of use cases that we see coming in. As Harsha also mentioned, Industry 4.0 is the most important constituent of driving 5G. So it will happen soon, definitely. So all telcos have started the 5G trials. We are doing it as well. We are all in the process of deploying cloud core architecture, which will be very, very key in giving 5G core components and applications. We have a large number of edge and compute locations in data centers across the country. building high capacity and secure underlying IP network as well. So our co-location has significant number of security aspects also built in already. Packet inspection capability, firewalls, DDoS protection. So it's just a matter of time on evolving use cases, and it will be market driven. I guess it will be now driven by the market on when it actually happens. So the question is not if it will happen. The question is when will it happen? And I think market forces are strong enough to drive it. And there was a time when we used to say, who needs 4G? And now we see that we are consuming about 10 to 15 gigabytes per day. Everything happens on telecom. And luckily for us, we had built a strong 4G network before the pandemic started. So everything went smooth and economy did not take a big hit. So I think the underlying bedrock for a resilient 5G is in place. It's just a matter of now market forces to drive us to achieve that milestone.
Yeah, Manish, so you can.
Yeah, so I completely agree with the esteemed speakers and their views. Kabir, my closing comments on this is that I firmly believe, right, India being the technical, particularly IT powerhouse that it is and has become, the potential is far, far more. I mean, we are literally providing, I would say, services to the rest of the world. And we have the best of engineers. And India has really, really made its mark in this particular field. Now, 5G is all about IT. It's about, cloudification, virtualization, and lots of other technologies. And if there is any country which can basically take that long leap forward, it is my firm belief and confidence India is that country. Having said that, there are issues around the huge amount of, the cost of spectrum, the investment. I'm sure we will, overcome those issues as well in bits and parts. The other point is that, the consolidation that actually had to happen in the industry has actually happened over the past 6 to 7 years. And let us not forget that it is the telecom, the telecom services by all the service providers put together, which have actually helped transform this country's digital landscape in bringing services even to the common man. And, COVID has only accelerated that. Look at it. There were people who could not even dream of doing an online transaction, right? And now it became a matter of survival. And that is where the human spirit really shines through, that when things get tough, the human spirit basically allows people or forces people to overcome their inhibitions around technology and adopt it at the fastest possible rate. So today you have the weakest strata of society being fairly adept at using smartphones, and doing online payments, using digital wallets, and so on and so forth. So I think the digital economy of this country has, got a huge fillip. Now, this is all going to support the telecom sector going forward. And now that the consolidation is over, I think it's a new sunrise. If government policies as well as, everybody works together in the country, I see a very, very bright future. And at the center of that bright future lies 5G. It's just that we have to take the right steps. We have to ensure that, the right frameworks, the right security baselines, as well as the right regulatory implications are enforced on all stakeholders, particularly OEMs who provide. To talk about Dr. Rajkumar's this thing on the MLAT, which has always been a problem for us. I think, Kabir, a very, very important factor that India must, is that, look, there is no point reinventing the wheel. There are a lot of technologies that we can and should develop in-house, but there are a lot of technologies which are available at not a very, very high cost. And perhaps we should be looking at 6G and 7G rather than trying to basically reinvent technologies for 5G. So we need to leapfrog that. Always look 5 years, 6 years ahead. So, right now, I think it's more about encouraging Indian players, but also joining hands with global players for a cost efficacy model. And the best way to overcome this is through government regulatory framework by declaring particularly critical infrastructure, cloud data centers, which host 5G core network, as well as edge systems as critical infrastructure of the country,
right?
Which is bound by its own this thing. And that itself, which means anybody who wishes to partake and participate in this entire journey, then has to conform to basic regulatory guidelines. And those regulatory guidelines should be such that they are meant to not meant to exploit, but rather to ensure that the safeguards, the strategic interests of the country are basically safeguarded.
Yeah,
if we are able to do that, I'm sure we can overcome all these issues.
Yeah. Thank you, Manish. Okay. So I think the last minute to you then, Harsha.
Yeah, I think India has all the right ingredients. I think both Dr. Rajkumar and Manish mentioned that. I think we have great software skills, right? And 5G is a place where we didn't have great hardware skills as a country. I think we have great software skills. I mean, we have exported software for years. So I think 5G sort of leverages that strength in India, right? So I think we have great software skills to build that network and the ingredients of the network. That's part one. B, I think the other place that is really exciting right now in India is the whole unicorn side of the story in India, and how, with 4G we have seen, the advent of so many unicorns, payment side, on the SaaS side that have developed. I think to develop that ecosystem in use cases, I think India has also got the right talent and the money and the focus right now to develop the application and the use cases that can run on top of 5G, that make 5G relevant, right? Whether it's gaming, whether it's telehealth, whatever it is, right? So I think India can be the factory that can sort of develop that side of the ecosystem as well, because I think that's a very important part of what India can deliver, not just for India but globally as well. So I think that's the second piece that's there. The network will happen, right? It took some time to for 4G to happen, but I think 5G will happen faster than that, and that's how technology has evolved globally. Every generation has moved faster than the previous generation. There is the question of what's the right ROI, what's that, but I think as the applications develop and the use cases develop, that will get solved, and there will be an answer to that. And I think India can produce that side of the ecosystem well. At the end of the day, when you look at 5G, the network investment or the is maybe for an enterprise spend is maybe, or for consumer is maybe $10 or $20 or $30, right? The question is, what's the application? What are they going to do with that? And that's the bigger ecosystem that I think India has the ability to create that ecosystem as well. So I'm very hopeful, Sunil. I'm very excited about where this can lead to in India.
Yeah, so on that positive note, let's end things. And I think it was a great, incisive, detailed discussion, and we have got a roadmap on what to go forward based on what you four said. So I think we just now have to go ahead and do it. That's it. We know what to do. We have to do it. So on that note, I'd like to thank Dr. Rajkumar, Harsha, Manish, and Gulshan. Thank you so much for making this debate so
Thank you, speakers, for such an insightful and thought-provoking session.